Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gen Talks. I'm your host, Aisha, and I'm my special guest, Dr. Sheikh.
What a pleasure to be here and to continue our dialogue, but on a very specific topic today.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
So the topic today that we'll be diving into is attachment styles. Now, the thing with attachment styles that's interesting is that it affects the way that we move in this world, the way we show up in relationships, friendships, at work, but most importantly, how we show up for ourselves and what we think of ourselves. The thing that's the most interesting, though, in my opinion, is that we're just carrying around these emotional templates that have been formed years ago, if not decades ago. So we have set out today to kind of better understand what exactly is an attachment style. So throughout today's episode, we'll be talking about what is an attachment style, when they're formed, what types exist, and most importantly, how we manage and understand them to be the best versions of ourselves.
Wow. Perfect.
Yeah.
Shall we stop the episode right here?
Well, without further ado, let's get into what exactly is an attachment style.
Now you're asking for the impossible. So these are psychological concepts. Can't be too precise, but I'll try to get as specific as I can. Mm-hmm. So attachment styles are, I would say, patterns of behavior, kind of templates, which, as you said earlier, are formed very early, usually actually due to the interaction between the infant and the primary caregiver, usually mother, very early on, and they do set the template for later relationships in life. Hopefully, if the primary relationship is quite secure, loving, warm, that leads to a very secure kind of template. If there are major gaps in that relationship, then that unfortunately sets a template for different kinds of non-secure templates, which could be anxious type, avoidant type, disorganized type. They're all kinds of types which I mentioned, but in general, they'll be less than healthy.
Okay. Interesting. So when you say early stages, what exact ages do you mean?
So the template is formed, I would say, in the first couple of years, really. It's, let's say, from 6 months to 18 months or something like that. It's very hard to pin down the window, but within the first 2 years.
Okay. And so, there's a lot of conversation, and I know there's ever-changing literature on the types that exist. But what we've done for today's episode is narrow it down to 3.
Okay.
Narrow it down to 4. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the secure attachment style.
Okay. Well, secure attachment, I would say this belongs to those people who are fortunate enough to have received the warmth and love and caring and felt secure growing up and safe. I mean, evolutionarily speaking, the first attachment, first relationship is the most important because you got to survive and then you got to thrive. So those are the result, the secure attachment style, are the result of that kind of relationship early on. And then people build on those. Mm-hmm. If the relationship is secure or safe early on, that leads to very healthy, secure styles of interactions in all kinds of relationships. Could be, relationships with friends, family members, romantic relationships, spouses, all of those.
And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have our anxious.
Yeah, so it's usually anxious style results where the primary relationship is not very secure, number one. Mm-hmm. 2, where during infancy, the kid has not received the warmth in a way where it tends to get quite anxious. And many times, these also result from a parent who herself or himself is quite anxious and not very giving, sometimes because they are too busy, sometimes because they are too worried about not knowing how to parent. There could be multiple reasons for those. But there obviously are gaps there where kid has not felt secure. So they grow up feeling a little anxious about their attachment, and then in later relationships, they are constantly anxious that the person they're going to have a relationship with is going to abandon them, is going to leave, or whether they are really worthy of that kind of relationship. So these people, the anxious type, they are really, in many ways, are constantly very worriers and anxious about relationships.
And then our third type is avoidant.
Okay, so that is the kind of relationship where they have never gelled with the primary caregiver. Really, they basically there's no glue.
Yeah.
So somehow they have decided that it's just not worth it. So withdrawn into themselves, and they try to avoid all kinds of intimacy, all kinds of close relationships. Appear to be aloof and cold sometimes. So that's the, again, classical avoidant type. And then in humanity, as you know, there's relationship styles, all are very messy. There are multiple shades of the gray in between.
True. And then our last one, which I thought was important for us to talk about, is disorganized.
Okay. So that's where I think I would say the best way to conceptualize is to think of these people who are very confused about their relationship. They don't know whether to approach or to avoid, or to come too close or stay too distant. So they flip-flop. Approach avoidance, come close, withdraw. Not one day, one thing, second day, another thing. So pretty much a Jekyll and Hyde, really.
Okay, interesting. So, now that we have a strong foundation on the 4 that exist, I would say, we're going to focus around like the 2 that, of course, are very popular in the sense of the anxious attachment, and then we have the avoidance, right? So based off of the conversations I've had, whether it's friendship or relationships, it seems like these 2 are a moth to a flame, right? So we have the anxious attachment that needs the reassurance of, like, please answer my text within 10 minutes. Please tell me I'm okay, XYZ. And then the avoidant, who's kind of like a little bit more withdrawn. So I bring this up because I have seen myself that those 2 tend to always seek each other out. And so I'd love to hear from you about, why do you think that is?
Why do I think that is? I can speculate.
Yes, of course, none of these answers are...
These are not hard sciences, because when it comes to human behavior, you have tendencies, you have patterns, you have templates, but tendencies are not destiny. So these are not rigid, and so they change. Now, after that preface, let me say that in terms of the anxious ones, because they are not sure of themselves, they in general tend to look for someone who seems to be very confident and not as needy as they are. Whether they are needy inside or not, it doesn't matter, but they appear to be aloof, and these are typically people who can either be fully secure or they can be avoidant, one or the other. So people who are very secure in themselves usually do not need to put up a show. The people who are a little bit more avoidant and trying to hide something, they kind of put on a makeup and appear to be even more confident than they really are.
True.
So they appear to be more attractive, more confident, more desirable.
True. Okay.
That's my opinion. So again, based on theories and some experience of treating people and my review of the literature.
Okay, interesting. Well, now I'm going to go based off of my ethnography and my own anthropological experiences. I would say that it is interesting, you bring up that thing that, for example, someone who's anxious, right, will go for someone who's avoidant. And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that we as humans do look for external validation. And I think it's so important to kind of reevaluate or think of yourself as the foundation and as the base, because like you said, human behavior is so fickle, it changes on a dime. But I think when we have that secure foundation even within ourselves, then these things kind of get easier, and then that avoidant isn't as attractive as they may appear at one time. The reason also why I think that this topic is really important, and I want to bring it up, is that in today's day and age of TikTok and Reels, we are given so many terms like attachment styles, or we're given, these information kind of about like oh, I was an avoidant and this person was anxious, or I was anxious and then I really liked an avoidant, and how that kind of caused that turmoil. But I think we don't seem to understand that, like you said, this is not our destiny, right? There's ways of managing it. I guess my conspiracy or my theory, which I know is a hot take, is that I feel like there's seasons and reasons for us to have these sort of attachment styles, right? In certain relationships, I'm sure that there's people that at work, they're so much more secure in how they carry themselves because of XYZ, right? But maybe in their friendships, they have a completely different dynamic that they have. What would you say is, once again, from your opinion, is a way to kind of keep stock of that, right? Like, what are warning signs we can have when we are finding ourselves to be perhaps more anxious than usual or more avoidant than usual?
All right. So let's step back a little bit.
Yeah.
First of all, let's look at the larger context. The larger context is that because of the social media and because of the need for constantly wanting to stay in touch, and as you said, somebody texts you and you say, they haven't responded in 10 minutes. All of that is truly, even though now part of the culture, is very abnormal when you look at it from the point of view of history. So all these have been, I would say, anomalies or innovations which have come about in the last few years. So with that constant bombardment, you obviously have even people who might have grown up with secure attachments or they have secure styles might get very anxious because of these demands, okay?
Exactly.
I mean, we did an episode earlier on dopamine. If you are constantly looking for dopamine and constantly looking for those hits, and if you don't get them, you're going to get anxious, even if you grew up with a lot of love and you had a secure kind of style in terms of attachment.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to put that out there in the background. Now, getting back to your question, I think the important thing there is to recognize that particularly these days, you have to be very careful and take your time getting to know people before judging them in terms of their style.
Yes.
Because of the, I would say, very transient and very quick nature of interactions these days.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get to know people. It always takes a while to get to know people. So that is the key thing in there. I would not assume if in one meeting or in one interaction somebody appeared to be avoidant or anxious that that's what they are.
Yeah.
Well, they are in that interaction.
Yes.
But that's not the totality of them. I think that's the most important thing, to keep your mind open and see if that is a pattern the other person is manifesting in multiple settings, multiple times.
Yes. And it's really interesting you talk about sort of these micro interactions we have, or these fleeting interactions we have, because I do think more now than ever, we are obsessed with labels. We act like we're not, but it seems like we are, based on the discourse online and sort of even in our daily jargon, because it's so easy for us to diagnose, I would say, people with things, right?
Yeah.
We get all this information and then we're like, oh, I'm like steadfast about the fact that this person is XYZ.
Yeah.
But like you said, I mean, there's so much gray area and there's so much nuance.
And this is a very good point. Let me come back to that. In fact, you pointed out earlier, and I did not address it. Let me address it now. This is the way human mind works. It abhors any kind of vacuum. We tend to want to label behaviors, people's situations to make us feel comfortable, because that would feel like you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case.
True.
So these are shortcuts, and unfortunately, then they give rise to making judgments about people. This is part of the issue. Most of the time, and now particularly in the more modern culture when everyone is in a hurry, so that tendency to judge people based on just 1 to quick interactions is even more pronounced. So what you brought up is spot on.
Yeah.
That the labels have become much more frequent, and they will continue, unfortunately, until the culture settles into a new norm.
Yeah.
Whenever that is.
I wonder when that's
Yeah,
going to be.
yeah.
Another very important reason why I bring up this topic is in regards to the justification that we have about each other's behaviors, right? And there's no sort of set guidelines or boundaries about how many times someone does something to indicate something. And I've noticed that sometimes when you don't want to be friends with someone, or maybe let's just say you're getting out of a relationship, it's very common for someone to say, oh my God, that avoidant, broke my heart and that person is the worst person ever, or I hated how that person was so anxious and clingy and that's why they're the big bad wolf. But I realize that that is harmful because like you said, there's so much nuance that goes into it. I also think that it's important for us to understand ourselves and our tendencies, but we do need to give each other some grace. And I think that there needs to be an element of letting go a bit. Sometimes there's things that take place that, like you said, maybe even the person doesn't even understand what's happening, let alone us, like being MacGyver and trying to understand and decode everything. And I mean, I don't blame anyone. And of course, I've dabbled in this behavior myself, but it's like you have, once again, all of your digital footprint, if they're liking someone's photo, the way that they texted you, if they use this emoji and this and that, and it feels like a recipe for disaster.
I am learning from you.
Yeah.
The words of wisdom, yeah. So I have no other way but to agree with you because half of what you said, I am actually not as familiar.
Yeah. Well, part of me is like ignorance is bliss, and I'm glad that you're not that familiar.
Okay.
So there's that. But I wanted to talk about, I guess, the emotions that come up with certain attachment styles. So let's just say you are someone that is suffering from this feeling of jealousy, right? Whether it's with your friends or whether it's a relationship. And then in turn, you also suffer from very negative self-talk. So, what are ways that we can strengthen ourselves?
Right. So the first thing is really awareness, the awareness that is there. But I would step back a little bit and I would say that getting jealous in that situation is pretty much very normal.
Yeah.
So instead of judging yourself that you're being jealous in that situation, the important thing is to say, okay, well, this is expected. Now, how do I counteract that? How do I channelize that kind of energy instead of thinking negatively? And that, I think that's where you can work on yourself and people can work on themselves. First thing is to become self-aware. Second is to then study and look for help from friends as well as actually professional help to see how one can best channel that in a more positive way instead of sulking and instead of thinking very negatively. And third is to then get busy with other things. Give some time during the time when there is a separation to get over the feelings so you could be objective about those. Meanwhile, looking for and pursuing activities which are healthier, whether they are sports or gym or books or friendships, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you bring this up because I'm like thinking back to my early 20s and there was a lot of that insecurity, right? And a lot of people don't particularly want to talk about it, but it is important to address it. And a lot of it stems from a mix of things, right? That you have societal pressure, you have your own expectations, and you find yourself in these loops going on and on and on, saying that you're not enough and that you need to do more, or this person is out to get you, or something along those lines. But like you said, to your point, I do want to emphasize, and I cannot emphasize this enough, that we are creators of our own destiny. We have so much more power than we actually think. And engaging in these behaviors, even if it's one small thing a day, right? Like whether it's, I'm not going to use my phone for 10 minutes and I'm going to pick up knitting, or I'm going to start doing a group class at the gym after work to keep myself busy instead of scrolling. It's these small things that start a massive revolution in the way that you carry yourself and the way you see yourself. I think that we kind of get so preoccupied and scared from this daunting idea that we are bad, right? That there's this binary that we are wrong and that we're bad, but we don't realize that it's like you're a masterpiece. You're in progress. You have to give yourself that time to develop and become this person that you're going to be. And there's audits that we have to take. Like I think of it now as I take an audit of how I'm feeling.
Well, that's very good. Very, I would say a very good approach. Just like you said, I think taking a developmental perspective is very important. That one is basically constantly going through development throughout life. Actually, it's a journey to enjoy the good parts that you enjoy, ignore some of those which you don't like, learn from those where you really stumbled, but keep on moving. And that's the important thing. Culture is going through a very rapid change at this time. There are all kinds of things which we just touched on. But I think it's very important to not get too harsh on oneself and recognize that you're actually making progress. And from what you just said, when one goes through the teenage years and early 20s, there is a lot of negativity during those times that one learns to overcome, learn from those mistakes, and then they can be converted into positive. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's for everyone there to know. Yeah.
Yes. And I think in line with sort of our whole premise of our show, Gen Talks, we, are having conversations with people that are in a different stage of life here. So we have different perspectives. And so I'm sure a question that the audience members have, and you've already touched on this, but how do you, go through that experience of wanting to have different experiences but not feel jaded? Because you said something so beautiful of, take some experiences and kind of leave some experiences. And I have like a very intense lecture about this, but I want to hear from you first before I get on my soapbox, because
I think you again have to look at the larger picture. You have to develop an overall, I would say, curiosity about life and life experiences, and have your own life objectives, the big ones, clearly in front of you, and the rest is the journey. Stay curious. Enjoy what you like. Don't enjoy the others which you don't like. Leave them aside. That is the attitude, I think, which will keep you from getting jaded.
Yeah.
From the repetition of experiences, because every experience, honestly, is different, is unique, and can be an enjoyable or a learning experience.
I agree. And I feel like these are all steps that we can take to be what we classify as secure, right? And I think oftentimes we have this thing where, especially in your 20s, you'll be like, oh my goodness, I am 24 years old. I have wasted 24 years doing X, Y, Z. But I think of it as, okay, well, I am X amount of years and I realize that maybe that wasn't working for me, but I'm going to change because I can, and there's so many ways that we can become more secure in ourselves and understand things. I also think on the flip side, we've been talking about anxious and sort of secure, but the avoidance that bubbles up in us when we have these certain experiences, I would argue that that's the most difficult to address. Because even I find myself on certain experiences or certain things that I have to do, I will kind of just take an avoidant approach because part of you hopes that if you close your eyes, it'll go away.
So that's a very good point. And I'm trying to remember now because it's been only 4 or 5 years since I was 24.
Yes,
but
exactly.
From what I remember, I tend to agree with you. It is hard because once you develop that kind of attitude, you are denying that there's any issue. You are not open to experiencing and then dealing with it and learning from it. You're just kind of becoming aloof and avoiding what it means, avoiding what lessons can bring, even avoiding any joy that might come with the experience.
Exactly.
So you're pretty much closed. So that is a hard one. I would say a person who's very avoidant, from my own point of view, you have to work harder to open them.
True, but maybe I see the glass as half full because I think about on a personal anecdote. As young women, we're given a lot of sort of diagnosis about what's going on with us, what's wrong, what's right. And when you're given a lot of that information, part of you wants to give up.
Sure.
And yes, in theory, you can say that, oh, but you can just change your life and all of those things. But for the longest time in my early 20s, I did sense this kind of avoidance, right? Where you just think that you're the victim and you're like, I'm just going to avoid this aspect of my life.
Sure.
But once again, when you realize that you have your whole life ahead of you and when you're more, curious and also secure, and you realize that I have to treat myself with respect. I need to work on my self-talk. I need to engage in healthy behaviors. If that's slowly cutting out sugar, if that's slowly going to the gym, not only will that improve my overall health, but that's going to make me secure, and that will make me attractive to relationships around me. I will be able to attract, good friends, a good relationship, because people respect that. They want to see people that are pouring into themselves. And I think that that's something that's very sort of underrated, right? That
Yeah.
it's an attractive element.
Yes.
You think, like you said earlier, the thing about how avoidants seem like they're secure. But I think that when someone is this true blue secure person that is working on themselves, even on the bad days, they get knocked down, but they're like, I'm going to get back up. That's what I think garners real respect.
Gee, you said with such conviction, I could not disagree with you.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll say is, in terms of any of these labels, developing a pattern or developing a template is a far cry from feeling that way, anxious or avoidant on a given day.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So feelings are on a continuum.
True.
They are dimensional. They are not binary. So on a given day, one can go through all of those emotions.
True.
And from what you said, the societal pressure on women, I mean, for one thing, it's not only the societal pressures are different, but also you have a much richer plethora, I would say, or richer treasure of emotions to choose from.
True.
So you get to experience all of those
We
that
do.
many of the men have no clue about.
Yep, that is true.
That is true, yeah. So, but actually for me, I wouldn't mind changing places for a day or two.
Just for a day or two.
Just for
Yeah.
a day. It seems a lot for ongoing basis, but at least to experience the variety, the richness of
Yes.
emotions
Yeah.
and the feelings, yeah.
As much as I wish I could be the genie to grant you that wish, I'm pretty sure that you would run away after the first hour. But on the bright side, we have podcasts like this that
Yeah.
can kind of bridge that gap and at least start conversations,
Start
right?
giving me some sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, some knowledge, yeah.
Do you think, I mean, obviously, there's always this spectrum, but do you find that women tend to have more likely to have a certain attachment style versus men? Or do you think that we can't perhaps?
So I'm not up on literature on that
Yeah.
one. I will just speak anecdotally
Yes.
from what I would see. Yeah, so I would say probably women tend to have more anxious style.
Yeah.
Because again, you are experiencing a whole lot more, so you are worried about a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Whereas a guy, I mean, mostly is oblivious,
True.
pretty much limited emotional richness
Yeah.
in his own world, self-satisfied. So it's easy for him to be avoidant.
Yeah, exactly. I also think that women, we tend to be people pleasers, and we tend to, want to be like the good person, the
Yeah.
good girl. And so, any slight sort of maybe validation that we don't get, right? If we're dependent on external validation, that can kind of, feel like a slight on us. So, but it's all a journey, I guess.
It's all a journey. It's all a journey. That's the thing. I mean, the excitement is in being curious, learning, enjoying it, looking back, reflecting on it constantly, and continuing to move on
True.
to achieve your larger goals.
True.
So that's where you don't get jaded. That's what I have done. And most days I'm not jaded.
Yeah.
Some days I am.
That's true. Okay, so now that we have the lay of the land about attachment styles, what would you recommend for someone who does not have a secure attachment style, so a not so secure attachment style, and how they can improve?
Okay, well, that's a very good question. And I would say your question covers, in general, all styles which are not secure or healthy. So the first thing is to recognize that there might be a problem, whatever that problem is. They might not be fully defined precisely, but the person is having trouble in relationships, all kinds of relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. So there is a problem. And the second is to become very aware whether you are fitting into one of these stereotypes. Third is to read up as much as you can on those. Fourth is to start getting feedback your friends. 5, if none of that helps, then to seek professional counseling. I think sooner or later, once you start digging deeper and start looking at it very seriously, you'll find out that there's a whole lot that you can do. you can begin modifying your attachment style, your communication style, your style in relationships, all of that, and then you will start getting positive feedback. People will start getting positive feedback, and they will themselves recognize that they can do something about it. So this is not as if it's a death sentence or sentence for life.
Yep.
You can do a whole lot about it.
Yes. And so to wrap things up, I would say, what would you recommend for our avoidance? And what would you recommend for our anxious? I mean, we've kind of already gone over anxious.
That's
but
okay.
I would say our ultimate goal is to be secure, right?
Yeah.
So what are maybe a few pearls of wisdom that you can impart on us?
So let's take them one by one. So people who have an anxious attachment style, and we were talking about earlier, we were saying that mostly women tend to have that. Really, it is to go through the same steps, to become aware, to seek help, to try to work on those, and then to seek professional counseling if that does not work. For the avoidant types, it's a bigger challenge because their self-awareness tends to be less. And again, I was giving an example, that's a generalization, with my apologies to men out there. But in general, if you are not aware, if you're not self-aware, it's harder to work on the problem. So I guess they will have to be pointed out by a partner or a friend that you do not deal with any difficult issues. Many times people in lay language say, you don't like confrontation. So confrontation doesn't have to be that extreme. What it means is many of people who are avoidant try not to face any kind of difficult issues. They just deny it.
Yep.
It doesn't exist. It's like closing your eyes.
Yeah.
Okay. The truck is coming at you full speed, but it's not coming. So it is harder. I think that's where they will need feedback from a loved one, from a good friend, because there seems to be a blind spot there.
Yeah.
I don't know honestly how to tell them that they have an issue unless somebody gives them the feedback.
True.
Because they can't get up early in the morning one day and say, boy, I'm very avoidant.
I know.
Because they wouldn't know.
Can you imagine someone's like, so I woke up and I realized I'm an avoidant.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I think that this is really, really good advice. And I think that it kind of feeds into our mission of this podcast, and particularly this episode, that, we are creators of our own destiny. And I really want my imparting message for today's episode to be that, these are not an identity. This is not a ultimatum or some sort of sentence, that this is it. This is actually, in my opinion, the start, right? It can be the start of something new, some change, a journey that feels arduous, but at least you come out the other side knowing yourself better. So thanks so much for explaining, because, my sort of anthropological insights are fun, and it's fun for the girlies to yap, but we always need our professional here.
It's a very good summary of what you said. So I'm very proud of what you just said.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us here today. And if you liked this episode, comment, share, subscribe, send it to all of your friends, including the aunties on WhatsApp, and we'll join you next time here on Gen Talks.